caution. Your paradigm is about to shift at the intersection of fact and reason. You're entering Kingston Country.
I'm Dan Kingston, and you're listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast. Today's guest is W. Gabriel Selassie I, PhD in U.S. History and African American Studies professor. Welcome to the Dan Kingston Podcast, Professor.
Hey, Dan. How are you, brother?
Great. And how are you?
I'm doing fine, man. I just want to say thanks for inviting me on the show. I really am looking forward to this opportunity to talk with you. I think this is the first time we've actually heard each other's voices.
Yes.
So I'm really stoked about that.
Well, actually, I've heard your voice and I've seen you because you've been on some really interesting conversations. I don't want to promote other people's shows, but I've definitely seen you interviewed and you're fascinating. You consider yourself a Rastafarian. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. Both in terms of my politics, the way that I see and understand the world, and also in terms of my personal spirituality. Right. So I believe that everyone, regardless of whether or not you believe that there is an actual physical manifestation of God or you're deeply religious, even if you're not, I think that everyone should have some idea of what is their inner working beliefs or values, and which one we call spiritualism. And you often hear that people will say, I don't believe in religions, but I'm spiritual.
Right.
And I think that that's a proper way to view the world.
Yeah, well, I think we need more of it for sure. And the idea is we're actually going to smoke pot together on air, although you're calling in, but we're going to do it at the same time. And then the idea is you're going to help teach me or lead me how to use that high as a quest to pursue meaning or inner meaning or spirituality, as you're putting it, in the way that a Rastafarian does, because I have a feeling I've been smoking all wrong this whole time.
Well, there are two particular aspects and that I just want to stress here. The herb itself, there are many ways to smoke herb. For example, you can just roll it in a rolling paper, or you can have a bong or what have you. My transition from smoking herb has, since I started in the 1970s, has transitioned over 30 years to now that I mostly smoke using the volcano.
I love the volcano. I use that too. Let me ask you, you've experienced going back to the 1970s. They always say how much it's changed and become so stronger now. I don't really have that experience. I never smoked in the 1970s, so I can't tell you. Have you noticed that? Has it gotten like a lot more powerful?
Well, I would say this, because when I first started smoking in high school and then moving into college, there were people who were selling Ganja herb who really didn't know of the technical aspects of it. So they didn't know necessarily, let's say, the differences between a sativa and an indica.
Right. We just got whatever we could get, right?
Exactly. So there were. I understand that there were plenty of times where I might have been smoking an indica and was wondering why instead of having that sort of euphoric sort of high, that I was sleepy. So it's hard for me to kind of answer that question, but I will tell you this. One of the things that has really transpired within herb is that there are many, many more varieties, and there are many, many more opportunities to get herb that has been engineered, let's say, or have been exposed to pesticides. So one really has to be somewhat careful about the herb that you do buy.
Oh, yikes. I didn't even know about that. Okay. Well, that's good to know. So all you listening out there, do your due diligence about the herb that you're buying. Okay. And that's a really good tip. Now, before we get into that actual toking up, I want to talk about Rastafari culture, if that's okay. And I got a question.
Yeah.
How far back can you trace the origins of Rastafari culture?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And this is one of the areas that really just every time I hear people talk about the origins of Rastafari, it just really makes me just start sweating because we began to see in Jamaica this sort of culture around a Rastafari spring up somewhere around the 1930s-ish and 1940s. And it really started to sort of come into people's consciousness with a couple of individuals, one of them by the name of Vernon Carrington, and then another man by the name of Emmanuel Charles Edwards. And then there was another man by the name of Leonard Howell, who some people call him the first Rasta. And this is 1930s, 1940s. The problem with that is that Leonard Howell, when he was interviewed around 1940s or so, stated that there were Rastas way before he came to the faith. So what that suggests is that Rastafari probably started to really crystallize as a thing probably in the early 19 teens, and maybe has really some sort of bubbling in the late 19th century.
Did they even have ganja back then?
Well, okay, so that's kind of another misnomer. Most people think that every Rasta smokes ganja, and that's absolutely not true. A lot of Rastas do not smoke ganja because they say that it interferes with what we call their livity, right? Their life essence, their life form. That it blocks them from seeing the world as it truly is, as opposed to many other Rastas who smoke, like myself, who would make the argument that it sort of strips away the sort of the fakeness of the world, right? So Bob Marley once said that smoking ganja reveals yourself to yourself.
I believe that, but could it be both true for different people?
Yes, it could. But the point that I'm emphasizing, I just want to stress this, is that, one, not all Rastas smoke, so there was the idea of Rastafari long before ganja was actually brought into Jamaica.
Now, when I went to Jamaica and I smoked some pot over there, and some seeds slipped away from the table where we were smoking, and a native Jamaican picked up the seeds and was kind of horrified that we just let the seeds slip away, and he asked if he could take them. I don't know if that rings a bell for you, or it's a sacred thing, ganja, for some Rastafari, it's sacred, the plant itself, or am I wrong? Yes.
Yeah, for the Rastas that do smoke, the herb itself is seen as a holy sacrament, right? So, and part of this, where this comes from really, is that at the turn of the century, there were a lot of Indians who were coming into the Caribbean for things like work. And they
Indians
were
from India, not Native Americans.
Yes, Asian Indians. So what they were bringing with themselves, not only their labor power, but they were also bringing with them their religious practices. And a couple of those religious practices eventually syncretized into the Rastafari faith. Two of them you'll probably know automatically. We've talked about one, and that is herb. The Hindus had a practice of drinking a concoction that they called soma, and the recipe for soma was lost over the many thousands of years. But what we believe is that soma most likely was a drink that was basically brewed herb leaves. And this practice of drinking herb leaves eventually was brought over by these spiritual men, these renunciants, into Jamaica, and that's where it eventually transferred over into the smoking of it. As a matter of fact, Leonard Howell, who I earlier stated was the first Rasta, actually opened up tea shops in Harlem, where they actually sold some variation of the drink soma. So, and this was in the 1930s, right, during when Harlem was in vogue, as they say. So that's one of them. The second one is the dreadlocks, right? So the holy men in India would wear long dreads, and that kind of was part of the impetus. And there's other things like the Mau Mau movement in Kenya, the revolt against the British in Kenya. but that's where the essence of this stuff comes from. It's the syncretization of Hindu spirituality with African spirituality and Christianity as well.
That's fascinating because you go to Jamaica and you see a lot of the stores are Indians who run those stores and are, I mean, not just in the stores. I mean, but there's a culture, an Indian culture. But I also noticed that many Rastas wear the Star of David, or it's on buildings everywhere. And as a Jewish person, a Jewish American or American Jew, or I don't know, however you say it, I really looked at that and was like, whoa, they have the Star of David. In my mind, the Jewish Star of David. But obviously, I mean, they don't look at it like the Jewish star. That's just their Star of David. Or can you explain that? Because I never really got to the bottom of that so much, except that there was a connection that Rastas also share with the Jewish connection in addition to Indian culture.
It kind of, I was just trying to just thinking in my mind how to sort of get this information out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? It's like, I just didn't know, like, how do you explain to someone who's like seeing all these Star of Davids everywhere, a Jewish person, and the lion, all these symbols that are so familiar to me?
Yeah, so there are a lot of, you've probably heard over the news where there were some black people who were claiming to be black Israelites.
Right.
Right. And there is actually somewhat of a large presence of black Hebrews within Israel. They've been given permission by the government of Israel to set up their own communities. And I wouldn't say that they are necessarily completely accepted, but they are welcomed in Israel.
You're talking about from Ethiopia or a different group?
No, they're actually from the United States.
Oh.
Right. So the black Jews of Ethiopia that's Beta Israel. Right. So the government of Israel does recognize them as a legitimate member of the Hebrew faith. The black Hebrews that I'm talking about are actually Americans who see themselves as being part of one of the lost tribes of Israel.
That's amazing. I had no idea about that.
Oh, absolutely. And so what Rastas kind of think about this, it's kind of like a twofold layering here. Not only is it sort of the lost tribes, one of the lost tribes of Israel, but also this sort of linking in their minds this fundamental idea that, like Jews, Africans were held in captivity in Babylon, released from captivity, and who are then on a quest to go back to the promised land, which for them is Africa. So there are these dual sort of understanding and dual symbols that provide for Ross this ability, being part of one of the lost tribes of Israel, and also this idea of understanding the story of the Hebrews as their story.
But Professor, I also heard that King David, and look, I'm not a biblical studies person, I really don't know, but King David or something had a relationship with an Ethiopian queen, and somehow that's connected to Selassie, or is there something right about that?
Yes. So the way that the story goes is that the biblical Solomon had a relationship with Makeda, which is called the Queen of Sheba. And from that union came a child who we call Menelik. And Menelik is the father of Ethiopia. So Haile Selassie, who is seen by Rastas as God's or Christ on earth during his time period, is a direct descendant of Menelik. So the way that the thought process, which is a highly sophisticated thought process, is that Haile Selassie, whom the Rastas revere, is a direct descendant of Menelik, who is the direct descendant of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who then Solomon is the son of David, and David is the brother of Christ.
And now people are maybe sitting there saying that, what does this have to do with Jamaica? They maybe don't know that the modern day Jamaicans are mostly from Ethiopia. Is that right?
No.
No.
Modern day Jamaicans have come from Western Africa via the transatlantic slave trade.
Huh.
But what they have done is that Jamaicans witnessed the coronation and the acceptance of Haile Selassie as the emperor of Ethiopia, therefore establishing this African. And remember, this was a time when Haile Selassie became the emperor of Ethiopia in 1930. So this was a time period when all of Africa basically was colonized by Europeans. So what you had for black people all over the world was this man who was installed as emperor of Ethiopia, who was seen by the League of Nations as the legitimate heir to Menelek's throne. And black people all over the world were saying to themselves, look, this is a man who, by all measures and all standards, is right an affront to European colonization and domination. So Jamaicans saw that as a divine prophecy by God, right? That Jesus Christ, if David is the brother of Christ, then what is Haile Selassie, who is the descendant of Queen of Sheba and Menelik, right? He is the avatar of Christ here on earth, right? The religious theory is absolutely fundamentally sound, right? Now it's just a question of whether or not you believe that Haile Selassie is the direct avatar of Jesus Christ on earth. That's subject to interpretation, right?
And at the end of the day, when you're trying to search for inner meaning and come to different spiritual planes, the actual, I don't know, all of these biblical things, I mean, does it really as important as the end result?
Well, I think what Rastas offered to the world, probably more than any other religious practice or spiritual practice, is this innate, deep belief in the goodness of mankind. The Rastas are, in many ways, more accepting of people than any other group that I've ever come across. And that is, a testament to just the way that Rastas have oriented themselves in their spiritual practices in the world, right? So, I mean, it's not a proselytizing faith. Rastas don't have missions. They don't go out and try to convert people to the faith, but they do try to explain to people, and in that sense, are accepting of how one decides to practice Rastafari. I mean, I have a lot of people who might necessarily take a look at some of my religious practices and say that, well, that's not traditionally the way that I would want to practice Rastafari, but then that's fine. It's all subject to interpretation.
Right.
Rastas, we look back to John 14:2, in my house there are many mansions, right? There are many ways to approach Christ, and that's entirely up to you to do that.
Okay, I want to get into the transition into the toking process that we're going to do.
Sure.
Mark H. from my Twitter wanted me to ask whether you brought Doritos or are you planning to make a Taco Bell run? And also, if it's okay, what's your take on Cheech and Chong?
First, Rastas eat a very strict diet that we call ITAL, ITAL, and this is a way of ensuring that particularly black people are eating a diet that's not harmful to themselves, right? We were pulled from Africa, brought to the Americas, and introduced to a whole new system, a new way of life.
The professor, it's similar to kosher, is it not?
Very much so. So we tend to not do things like snack on junk food, that sort of thing.
No Taco Bell, no Doritos. What about Cheech and Chong? Surely you can enjoy Cheech and Chong.
I think at some point I was following, Cheech Marin on Twitter. I'm not sure if
he's a fantastic actor. Many people don't realize he's a serious actor.
Yeah, he actually is, and they're both absolute proponents. Well, I think one of them passed away. Didn't Chong pass away?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I know Cheech Marin, he is an avid spokesman for Ganja.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, me too.
I was as a kid as well.
Okay, now Timothy asks, why alter your body's chemical balance to seek spiritual things?
Yeah, a good question. Some Rastas would absolutely agree with you that why would you want to alter your perception? And here's the way many Rastas see it. Your perception is already altered. You're looking at the world and you believe that you think that what's in front of you is actually what exists in the world, and that is absolutely fundamentally not true. People have been using everything from mushrooms to, like I said earlier, to soma, you name it, to alter their perception, ayahuasca, to alter peyote, alter their perceptions about the way the world is, because we've come to this understanding that in a civilized society, the things that we value and the things that we see and the things that we think we are and how we've come to see ourselves is not actually the way things are in reality.
Okay, you're getting me excited now. We gotta get into this because you're getting me all ready to do it. If you're listening at home, you might also be feeling like you're ready to get started. Okay, so go along with us. Join this process with us if you want. I'm not forcing you. Obey the laws at home, right? Professor, are you ready to smoke?
Right.
Is there a preferred method or device that you recommend?
I use a Storz Bickel Volcano. It's rare that I smoke probably about once a month now, and it's rare that I will actually light up. If I do roll a joint, it's usually because someone is next to me who's done it.
But don't Rastas have a big thing of like passing the chalice?
Yeah. Okay. So what we're about to engage in now is what we call reasoning. And what reasoning is that what Rastas do is we like to gather in places that we call yards, YARDS. And it's just basically an area where we can bring Nyabingi drums, the djembe African drums. We'll sit in a circle and someone will light a chalice or otherwise known as a bong, or a spliff, and we will literally light and we will pass around into the circles, enjoying the libation amongst ourselves.
But we can pretend that there's music and we can visualize that not just us, but everybody listening, we're all in a community here. You can visualize the music and you can visualize the community feeling. Now, let me know, is your volcano heated up and ready?
Oh, absolutely, man.
Okay, I'm going to grab my chalice, and then on the count of 3, we'll take a puff, or does one person go and the next person go?
Yeah, just give me an opportunity.
I'll go first.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, now, I'm not a pussy. This is a big chalice. Okay, I only took one, but it's a big chalice, okay? Right. So I want people to understand that.
Me and
I'm passing to your volcano.
Yep.
Now, you have a big bag? You took a big bag or a medium bag?
I have a big bag, and I'm going to empty the big bag.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna take a little seconds here. Okay. All right. So, where do we begin, Professor?
Okay, so now what usually happens is that maybe there will be a Rasta elder or somebody who might ask a political question, and then people just will take it from there. And usually what we try to do is, of course, everybody's respectful and all that, but we try to just ground our ideas into some reality, right? So that the ganja will help to strip away some of the, perhaps that some people might be feeling a little intimidated or not sure of themselves, that sort of thing. So the ganja happens to kind of, or shy, and strip all of that away.
Interesting. I I took a little bit this morning too. I'm going to take a little bit more because I just want to make sure I'm really in the zone. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Help yourself. I'm going to do the same as well. And so what we can do is that you and I are not probably a whole lot far away, but we are on the opposite end, I think, of the political spectrum. And
I look at politics
on
more like a Venn diagram. I don't know what you make of that, but like they always teach us in school, it's like a spectrum. But I think there's way more overlap.
Yeah, I always have the philosophy that people that I meet, no matter where they are in the world, are liberal on some issues and conservative on some issues, right? It just depends, right? That some things, Rastas have a tendency to be extremely, like for example, they are anti-abortion. They tend to be anti-gay in terms of the not somebody's personal belief, but gay marriages, right? They tend to be anti-gay marriages. But then again, they are also very much open to everybody living their own lives as they see fit.
Yes.
So while they may not,
like a duality of thinking there.
Yeah. So absolutely. So it's the overlap, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the overlap. So they hold those opposites, which is a psychological thing I recently heard about. But what I thought would happen is that I would get very self-conscious and paranoid. Usually I don't toke up before I record a podcast because I do get self-conscious and paranoid. Right now I'm not feeling that way, which is why I actually took a little bit more because I was like, okay, I'm surprised I'm not feeling self-conscious. So I'm feeling very comfortable with you in this conversation. And so the purpose of this is to reason and to talk politics. So really, I mean, that's really what we'd be doing is beating drums and music and then talking politics?
Yeah, absolutely. Because think about it.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you for Rastas where this would be going. So, for example, the big question is where Black people's political allegiance should be in North America. Right?
As a white person, am I even included? I mean, that's an amazing thing. I'm included on this conversation right now that you're bringing me in.
Absolutely. Why not? People, everybody, what do they say? And what was in the movie? God, I can't think of the name of the movie right off the top of my head. But everybody has a right to. What's that?
I said, I wonder why you can't think of it.
Yeah. The saying that everybody has a right to contribute a verse, right? So the idea here is that everybody has something to offer, right? So, I mean, it's just a question on whether or not you want to accept what they have to offer. Now that's up to you. But so the questions that Rastas would talk about are things like what should Black participation in politics be, right? So that's a really interesting question that Rastas have been ruminating over for 50 years, going on 60, 70 years, right?
Right now, it looks like a lot of African Americans are very much in the Democrat Party, although you're hearing more talk about we're not beholden to anybody. And kind of you hear this talk, like maybe that's part of the problem is that not necessarily everybody's switching to the Republican side, although you do see a lot of African American patriots now. But more so, is there kind of a realization that, hey, the Democrats are more talk than action? Is that fair?
Well, it's fair in some respects, and I'll say it like this. As you know that once the slavery ended, there were already free Black people in the United States who had a variety of different allegiances because there were Black people who owned slaves, right? So there would have been Black people who may have supported some, like let's say, for example, the Southern Whig or the Democratic Party, especially particularly Blacks in Louisiana who were free Black people who were wealthy and owned slaves. So their allegiances may have been towards the Democratic or the Whig parties. But once slavery ended, the vast majority of Black people in the United States became Republicans. The Republican Party, as you know, was founded in 1954 as a direct result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And that act was what was going to determine whether or not in Kansas it was going to become a free or slave state. So in those days, the Republican Party was seen as the liberal party, and the Democratic and Whig parties were seen as the conservative parties.
Yeah, it all switched.
Today, those two parties have completely flipped, and the memberships of the parties have flipped. So
let me ask you something. I got to ask you a question. I hear this a lot from, and I know you don't necessarily consider yourself a Democrat, or you're.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, and I understand that. And the question is, I hear a lot of people say this on the Democrat side or the far left side, that if an African American votes Republican, let's say, that they're actually voting against their self-interest. What would you? How would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel like, let's just reason here and get down to it, because I feel like that's almost unfair. I don't know if racist is an okay word to use for that, but I don't think it's a right way to reason, because, for instance, I'm Jewish. My first interest isn't Israel. I mean, or let's say I'm a white person. My first interest isn't the fact that I'm a white person. I mean, I don't think it's wrong if a Jewish person wants to only vote on Israel issues. I wouldn't judge, but why should anybody be judged based on how they want to vote?
Okay, let's break it down in this way. I'll give you something we won't have to run back in history to kind of unfold it. Right now, across the United States, where you have Republican-held governorships and legislatures, there is massive voter purging going on. Massive.
Well, there's also illegals that are allowed to vote here in California. I mean, you got the corruption on both sides.
Yeah, but those are two separate issues.
But you're talking about
because what you're going to ask, what you're trying to do with that statement is try to say that the voting purges are necessary because they're illegal.
No. I'm not saying I'm not rationalizing it at all.
Okay, so then they have nothing to do with each other.
I'm saying they're both wrong, and the politicians, everybody's corrupt.
Yeah, but I'm going to explain to you why black people would see voting Republican is voting against their interests. So these voting
white people believe it too, Professor. White people believe it too.
Just hold on for a moment. Let me get to you what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So these voting purges by Republican-controlled state legislatures are happening, and it's affecting. Even if the Republicans in that state said this is not meant to purge black people, but the net result is that you're purging black people. Why would a black person then vote for a Republican who will come in and then kick him off the ballot, off the voter?
I don't know. I mean, I can't get inside their head and know exactly.
There you go. They would.
But I can't get it. But there are some that are voting for Trump and very explicit about it. And I don't think as a white person, I'm okay to say you're voting against your interest. I think that's if a leftist says that, especially as a white person, you're not, but I'm a black person, so I can say that. I'm hearing this from a lot of white liberals because that's just what I'm hearing, and I'm saying you shouldn't say that. I'm not saying it's wrong for you to say it, as an African American. I guess that's fair, but would you agree that it's weird that white people are so adamant about blacks who vote Trump going against their self-interest? Why can't they just let them vote how they want to vote?
Because white liberals sit next to black liberals and they talk to each other and they say, oh, I didn't know that. Hey, everybody, did you know? And they are doing nothing more but spreading the information. So I don't have a problem. Now, what I would have a problem with is if a white liberal, someone who calls them liberal, would, at the end of the day, can't acknowledge that everybody has a right to vote for whomever they vote for. Right? I mean, I don't believe in the totalitarianism of forcing one to vote their own perspective. Most liberals I hear are fairly respectful. Right? They may ask questions and assert things, but they're fairly respectful.
Yeah. What do you think about tolerance? We have to go back to everybody should just be more tolerant, don't you think? Or no?
Yeah, I actually do. But you know what? I also believe that if you're willing to give it, you must be willing to take it. I mean, most
I'm realizing how high I am right now. It's catching up with me, Professor. Like, what's that? What's it called when it sneaks up on you? Is there a phrase for that?
Oh, I don't know.
It's sneaking up on me. The difference between the volcano high and the chalice high, it's subtle difference, is it not?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a really big difference. The volcano, it takes, I think, a much more to get really high from the volcano. But
so you tricked me. You got me super stoned. I'm at a disadvantage. I'm just kidding. Actually, I would disagree. I think the volcano gets you really lit. Especially if you haven't used it in a while and you use it, I think you can get really stoned off that thing.
Yeah, I think so. It takes me a few bags to get to that point, but I can do one really good hit off a bong and I'm there.
Okay, when we get there, and I'm there right now, some things seem more trivial to me and unimportant, and other things seem more important and less trivial. Do you notice that dynamic?
Yeah, because then the inner you is actually coming out. You are literally telling yourself about yourself.
I'm more of an introvert when I get stoned. Does that mean I'm more of an introverted person?
Probably. Right? I mean, we all have our masks that we wear, don't we, from time to time, and we take them off depending upon the situation. I mean, Chris Rock's mother once had the famous statement, so when you first date somebody, you date their representative.
It's true. There was some princess who said this quote that always stuck with me, that to others we're not ourselves, but a character in their lives, cast for a part we do not even know we are playing. And it is just, isn't that something to that?
I believe it. Absolutely there is. And I think what's really the beauty about Ganja is that you will begin to think about things that in the normal instance you probably wouldn't think about it. I mean, I write academically, and I can really write well when I've had a little bit of Ganja. And I can do it a lot longer. I mean, I'm getting older, so the smoke is more deleterious to me now that I'm getting older. But in my 30s, when I wasn't in the military, it was really great, right, for working, thinking.
What did you do in the military, may I ask?
Yeah, the thing that I'm most proud of, I had two lives. I was an enlisted, non-commissioned officer, and then later on I got a commission and became an officer. So the thing that I'm most proud of are I was an executive officer for a MP group, the 6 MP group out of Colorado.
Thank you for your service. Appreciate that.
And I loved being in the Army, and I'm pretty proud of my time in the military.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because some people wouldn't equate that to a Rastafarian, because isn't there like a big pacifist thing, or no?
Yeah, some Rastas are pacifists, but many are not, right? We believe in Jah's army. So sometimes you'll see Rastas, they'll have jackets on, or they'll wear camouflage. They'll have the military insignia on their jackets because they believe in fighting for the faith, right?
Where do we go from here, Professor? At this point in the search for meaning, do we still talk about political stuff? I mean, what's the next topic?
That's generally what we talk about is politics and religion, but sometimes people talk about things that are close and personal to themselves, right? So that's something that can be done, right? We all have the things that hold us back and what motivate us, right? I mean, I'm a person that when I smoke, one of the things that I generally think about and talk a lot about in my reasoning sessions is, what kind of life should people be living in the 21st century?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah, I mean, we're fast approaching a time where machines are getting ready to take over much of what we're doing in the world. So what does that mean? What does being productive in the world now mean?
A lot of people listening actually listen, like Andrew Yang. I know that, and I'm not all the people listening are Trump supporters. There's so many people listening to this show, Professor, but to speak to the Andrew Yang people are jumping up out of their seat and saying, yes, automation. And that's a big problem. I mean, what do you think that's going to end result of that is going to be?
Well, I think the beauty of Yang's presidential run here, or nomination run, right, for eventually get the chance to run for president, is amazing because I think it's the first time that people really have been thinking about this to any great deal. And here's what's fascinating about it. I'm old enough to have lived in a world where there were no computers, right? And I remember going into a Radio Shack and seeing the computer for the first time, the kind that it just had a keyboard and you would hook it up to the back of a TV. And so I lived in both worlds. I know I can pretty much understand the world that Abraham Lincoln lived in. But today's young people can't. But today's young people are more interested in this future world. And the boomers, the okay boomers like myself, have no understanding why some of these young people are attracted to Andrew Yang. Now, get this. I was born on an Indian reservation in Arizona. My parents moved to teach Native American kids. And people rode horses. Okay. You go back to the reservation today, and maybe one person might have a horse, but back in those days, it would not have been, sort of.
So it was older. It was 1960, but it felt like an older time because did he have like a telephone and that? I mean, what was it like?
Yeah, it was pretty Spartan, right? We kept, it was one of those things where you keep the doors open all the time, right?
You told me a story in Twitter about the Dunning-Kruger effect or something. And you were like, you told me something funny. It made me crack up because I don't know if it's okay. Can I share the story?
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned that when you were a boy, your mom slapped you across the face, and from then on, you understood that you didn't know everything. Essentially, is that right? Yeah, my mother was pretty upfront. My mother is the reason why I became a Rasta. Right, she ran off to Ethiopia, and I was listening to "I Shot the Sheriff" from one of my teacher's cassette tapes, and I thought it was the worst music I had ever heard in my entire life. It was Bob Marley and the Wailers. I said, "What is this crap? It sounds so awful. It's just terrible. The beat's not even right." And my teacher screamed at me and said, "You don't even know your own culture." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I go home and my mother explains all of this stuff to me. And I'm like, "That's what all of this stuff is. Why didn't you say anything?" She says, "Well, you weren't old enough to figure it out." Right. So, so I grew up in a time period where, having the basic necessities and no technology, right, are standard. But think about young people. Young people are clamoring to Yang because they know what's in front of them. They know that the world is vastly going to change so quickly that they want to be prepared for it. And us boomers, right, are sitting on the fence doing nothing. Well, it looks like a lot of boomers like Bernie, and Bernie's pretty radical. I mean, at least here in California, it seems to me that the people that are surging most have a populist message, like including Trump, Bernie, Yang, even Steyer to a lesser extent. Now, there has to be something to that. Why are people so upset? Why are people so angry? I think a lot of it has to do with housing affordability on either side. I mean, and not knowing why it's like this. One guy just sent me an image that it was like housing permits is the reason why there's no housing available. Just comes down to what states allow housing to be built. Could it be as simple as that?
Well, I think it's much, much more complicated because I remember being a homeless college student and my housing situation.
How is that possible? How could you be a homeless college student?
I paid for my own college out of my own pocket.
Where did you sleep?
In my car.
And where did you study? In the library? So you spent most of the time in the library.
Yeah. Yeah, so people would put mattresses under their bed, in their dorm room, so I'd get in the dorm and then pull out the mattress while, sleep on the floor. I did whatever I had to do. I worked jobs where I got a free room for a year once. I basically brow rated a friend of mine to let me live with him. I did everything possible.
What's your message to somebody listening right now? I had a guest on this show who's a homeless candidate running for Congress. And God, he's smart, but he had some psychological issues, but God, he's smart. And anyway, that not everybody that's homeless has psychological issues. Sometimes they're just trying to put themselves through college. What's your message to somebody listening who is down on their luck about trying their best to get through it, or they're going through a difficult time and maybe they don't even see the light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, do you see the light at the end of the tunnel when you were sleeping in your friends', dorms and sleeping in your car as you're going to college, or did it look hopeless?
Yeah, I did, because one of the things that I did for myself is I set some obtainable goals that I knew that there was no, and I talk about this a lot, are there obstacles for Black people in America, right? And for example, are there goals that that the only reason, but besides you getting cancer, for God forbid, knock on wood, but just some things that you know that if you set these goals, you can obtain them, and there's probably not much going to stop you but yourself. So one of the things that I knew that I had to do was pass every class. I wasn't always successful, but these were immediate goals. Once you pass all of the classes, then you get your degree, and then you can get a job, right? Join the Army, just get through basic training, right? And once you get through basic training, then they're going to send you onto your advanced school.
Graduate short-term goals that are lined up with that build upon themselves, but not focusing too much on the bigger picture, keeping your eyes on the prize and the short-term goals.
Yeah, well, you know what the big picture is, right? Because it's like life isn't worth much if you don't have dreams, right? I mean, what's the point?
Good point.
Right.
So everybody spends their time imagining the best big picture end result and not enough time looking at the next step right in front of them.
Absolutely. Just what are those steps? Put them in front of you. And you know what? I can remember getting my Army commission and working a full-time job and going to graduate school. So I had 3 things that I had to do: Army stuff, school stuff, and work. And I can remember being on the 110 freeway, driving to my graduate class and almost breaking down because the traffic was killing me. But you know what? I would change my uniform to go to my ROTC classes in my car. I would literally put my pants on in my car on the 110 freeway, going to Long Beach State. And people would see me in the parking lot putting on my uniform in my underwear.
They wonder, how did you do that? But the traffic is like a parking lot over there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you were able to do it. Everyone's just sitting there, and so you have time to change. That's funny.
Oh yeah. So you by the time you get out of the car, you have everything on but your boots, right? So
people are looking at you and saying, "What the hell is this guy doing?" Right?
Absolutely. But you know what? I wanted to get that Army commission and become an officer in the Army more than anything, and I would have put up with anything to do it. I mean, you could have literally came to my house and basically hit me over the head with a 2x4 every night, and if that's what I had to do, I would have done it.
Where did that come from? Did that come from your mom slapping you on the face?
I think my mother was probably, and my father was a really smart man. But I think the idea, because my parents basically were, products of people who came from slavery, right? So my mother's grandmother was a slave. So coming from that to my mother eventually getting a college degree and becoming a teacher, right? So
can I ask you about reparations? Not to change the topic, but before I forget, because I know that that's pros and cons to it, and one of the cons is that if you offer reparations, then does that just settle it? Then everybody says, okay, well, it's done now. We don't need to worry about African Americans anymore.
Yeah, there is a twofold thing that's problematic, and why I'm on the fence with reparations. And the audience will understand this.
I'm for it, actually. I'm for reparations. I think that we have the records, and if you can trace that your grandma, was that what you said? Your grandma was a slave?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I'm for it. I think there should have reparations. Your mother's grandmother.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the number should be, and I don't think that it means that, okay, now we don't need to worry about citizens of this country anymore. We all need to worry about ourselves But I do, even if we pay reparations. But that being said, yeah, there should be reparations because you can trace it. And then you can say, yeah, you can say we did something good. It was late, but better late than never.
Here's the thing, Dan. You don't even have to go back towards slavery, man. Remember, I was born in 1961. In the world that I was born in, there were places in America that I could not go to because of the color of my skin. But when I was born, so for the early 10, 12 years of my life, America was still a very segregated country.
Well, in my lifetime. Yeah. It was. I mean, like my parents, if they're as Jews, they had signs, they say no Jews in the pool too.
Absolutely. So what the question then is, does America owe a debt to people that have been systematically, purposely marginalized and killed? Do you owe them a debt?
I say in general, no. In general, no, because where do you draw the line? Do short people get something? Do people that are disadvantaged because they can't talk very well? I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, how can you tell who's more marginalized than anyone else?
Dan, that's a straw man. The United States didn't fly airplanes in 1921 and drop bombs on black people because they were short.
I'm saying for black, if you're talking specifically about African Americans.
You're trivializing black people's pain.
No, I'm saying African Americans should have reparations because there's an actual link. You can actually trace it back and see what's happening, and you can quantify that, and there should be reparations. I'm saying you have to draw a line at some point because how are you going to offer reparations to every single marginalized community? At some point, you have to say, okay, wait a minute.
That's not true. The African Americans this is not just about marginalization. There is no group in the United States but black people and Native Americans who had an entire country constructed in a manner to destroy these populations, to work to death one, and to destroy the other one, and then moving from slavery to destroy the other one. There's no groups in there. It's short, orange people, tall people, no groups.
Well, I agree, and we'll keep it that way. I think I agree with you there, and I think that makes sense. It's logical that we do give Native Americans special privileges and African Americans as well.
So what we gave Native Americans to pacify them is, here's some land, go away. Run your own affairs, go away. They offered black people 40 acres and a mule and some land, the land 40 acres and a mule, and black people didn't get that.
Right. Well, which is why I agree. I think we should have reparations. But the question then after that, you have to look at, let's say, how do you measure who is more a victim than anyone else? And as an individual, I'm not saying as a group, I'm saying as individual Bob versus individual, whatever. How do you match up who has it harder?
I don't know. And I really think that when people have lawsuits, and you have class action lawsuits, lawyers are fairly adept with figuring out who gets what.
Well, I hate those things. Those guys are always taking advantage of it.
Everybody does, but it's the way that we've been doing business since we started.
It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. I think we have to move away from it, but I would agree that we should provide reparations. I mean, at least we have the overlap there. Well, actually, I don't know. Is that I don't know if that's your position, is it?
Yeah, my position is that black people should get reparations, but I also state
we agree.
That in many ways, the reparations part, the writing the check absolves you, right? Writing the check, like you stated, can basically say, okay, we're done. Right. There's no more racism. There's no more anything. You got your reparations. Now the world is fine. And I doubt tomorrow that if I got a check from the U.S. government that things in America would change.
No, they wouldn't, and that's the reason why we have Trump, and that's the reason why Bernie is surging, and these people that they have discounted, whoever they think has no chance ends up surging because they're not seeing what's happening on the ground, and people can't afford rent or housing or medical costs. And they're going to look and they're going to say, well, something's not right. And it has to be more complicated than one thing. Like, I think you mentioned that too. And I agree with you. It has to be a confluence of evil things that have happened to us, to our society. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of America?
I'm optimistically pessimistic. And when I say that is...
what does that mean?
What I say that is that the history of the world of human beings has been one of challenges and overcoming those challenges. Right? The first rocket that NASA put on the launch pad blew up, right? So, we're at a point now where we go through some rough patches and then we get through them. What I think the problem is in America is that both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, have been so lied to by the corporations and the 1% that both groups are fighting back at the very their masters, right? They're fighting back at both of their masters. The Republican Party basically is not the Republican Party of George Bush or Ronald Reagan. The Trump is a backlash to the GOP status quo, and Bernie is a backlash against the Democratic status quo.
Well, we could go on forever, but already this is the longest podcast episode, and for good reason, because I think whether you agree with the professor or not, you are super fascinating, man, and I loved learning about the Rastafarian culture, and I think it's going to be really interesting hearing myself back really high, so that's going to be crazy. But thank you today for your time on the Dan Kingston podcast. W. Gabriel Selassie, PhD, U.S. History teaches U.S. History and African American Studies. Thank you, Professor, for your time on the podcast.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot. Good talking with you, brother.
You too.
Stay strong.
Kingston Country. You've been listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast.
Dan Kingston here. Are you fed up with the mainstream media? Do you want to support citizen journalism? The Dan Kingston Podcast is dedicated to asking questions and exploring topics the mainstream media won't touch. If you enjoy this content, would you help me give you even more for less than $1 a month? Yeah, less than $1 a month. You can help me do just that. And it's as easy as using Apple Pay or any credit card. And by the way, I'll be thanking sponsor names, your name, at the beginning of each podcast episode. So would you consider signing up for less than $1 a month? Find the link to become a sponsor in the description of this podcast episode, or visit anchor.fm/Dan Kingston. Thank you in advance for supporting citizen journalism and helping me provide you with even more content. I really appreciate it.